The fired mechanic returned alone to collect his belongings, but the workshop begged for his help with the car. Friday morning dawned with the dry heat characteristic of Guadalajara in March. Miguel Angel Hernandez arrived at the Los Reyes auto repair shop at 7 o'clock sharp, as he had done for the past 12 years. The smell of burnt oil and metal hit his nose as he walked through the side door. That aroma had become part of his life. The walls of the shop were stained with grease accumulated over decades, and the concrete floor bore the scars of countless repairs. Three hydraulic lifts occupied the main space, surrounded by tools hanging from metal boards arranged with military precision. Miguel, come to my office. Don Roberto Reyes's voice rang out from the small glass room overlooking the workshop. His tone was different, colder than usual. Miguel left his coffee thermos on the workbench and walked toward the office, feeling the stares of his colleagues on him. Mario, the youngest of the team, looked away. Javier, who had worked with him from the beginning, shook his head slowly. Don Roberto was sitting behind his cluttered desk, covered with invoices and repair manuals. He was 63 years old, with completely white hair and rough hands from a lifetime of working with engines. He had inherited the workshop from his father and turned it into one of the most respected in the Tlaquepaque area. But in recent years, things had changed. His son, Roberto Jr., had returned from studying business administration in Monterrey with new ideas and little patience for old ways. "Sit down, Miguel," said Don Roberto, without looking up from the papers in front of him. Miguel sat down in the plastic chair, which creaked under his weight. He weighed 209 pounds, most of it muscle developed from years of carrying transmissions and engines. He was 42 years old, although the premature gray hair on his temples made him look older. "Look, there's no easy way to say this," Don Roberto continued, finally looking him in the eye. "We're going to have to let you go. Roberto Jr. is restructuring the business. He says we need to cut costs, bring in younger people who charge less." Miguel felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. Don Roberto, after 12 years, just like that, his voice came out more broken than he would have liked. He thought of his wife Laura, of the mortgage on their small house in Tonalá, of the school fees they still had to pay even though they no longer had children at home. "It's not personal, Miguel. You're the best mechanic I've ever had. You know that, but Roberto has the numbers. He's in control. Now I'm just the name on the door." Don Roberto took a manila envelope out of the drawer. "Here's your severance pay. It's what you're entitled to by law, plus a little extra I managed to get." It's not much, but Miguel took the envelope without opening it. He stood up slowly, feeling every muscle in his body tense. "When do you want me to leave?" "Today would be best. Let's avoid any drama, you know." Don Roberto couldn't hold his gaze. Miguel left the office and walked straight to his work area. For 12 years, that corner of the workshop had been his domain. He had organized every tool, marked every drawer with handwritten labels. His red toolbox, a Snap-on he had paid for in installments over 2 years, was locked next to the workbench. But many of his personal tools were scattered around the workshop, mixed in with the business tools after so much time. "I'm sorry, bro," said Javier, approaching him. "We're all sorry. This isn't right. It's not your fault," Miguel replied. Beginning to gather his things, he found a set of torque wrenches in the third drawer, his special sockets for European hubs, the rubber mallet his father had given him when he opened his first workshop years ago, before he went bankrupt and ended up working for others. Mario approached timidly. "What are you going to do, Miguel?" "I don't know, kid. Find something, I guess." Miguel put his tools in a cardboard box that Mario had brought him. In this city, there are always cars to repair. Roberto Jr. entered the workshop at that moment wearing a light blue dress shirt and expensive jeans. He was 31 years old and had the arrogance of someone who had never had to get his hands dirty to earn a living. "Miguel, I need you to hand over the workshop keys and sign these papers before you leave." He held out a clipboard with several documents. Miguel glanced over them quickly. They were standard termination forms, promising not to take any confidential information or clients with him. He signed without saying a word, knowing that his reputation was the only thing that really mattered in this business. He dropped the workshop keys that he had carried on his keychain for all those years onto the workbench with a metallic clang that echoed in the uncomfortable silence. "One more thing," said Roberto Jr. with a fake smile. "You have until Monday to come back for the rest of your things. There are too many tools mixed up, And we don't want this to become a legal issue about what's yours and what belongs to the shop. Miguel nodded. He picked up his cardboard box and his coffee thermos. Before leaving, he took one last look around the shop. The white Volkswagen Jetta on lift 2 with its engine half dismantled. The red Chevy pickup that had been giving them electrical problems all week. The gray Nissan waiting for a transmission change. Each car was an unsolved problem, an interrupted story. "See you later," he said quietly, addressing his co-workers more than the bosses. He walked toward the exit without looking back. Outside, the mid-morning sun beat down hard on the pavement. Miguel placed the box in the back seat of his 1998 Ford Lobo, faded blue from the sun, and with almost 300,000 kilometers on the odometer. The engine started on the first try, that hoarse, reliable sound he had tuned hundreds of times himself. He sat for a moment, his hands on the steering wheel, looking at the Los Reyes workshop sign. Trusted automotive service since 1978. 12 years of his life. 12 years of arriving early, staying late, solving the impossible cases that other mechanics had given up on. 12 years of building a reputation that he would now have to start from scratch. He turned on the air conditioning, which barely cooled the car, and drove home trying to find the words to explain to Laura what had happened. Laura was in the kitchen preparing hibiscus tea when Miguel arrived home. It was barely noon and she was surprised to see him walk through the door. His wife was 40 years old with black hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she was wearing the navy blue uniform from the pharmacy where she worked as an assistant. She had the day off, which was rare in her rotating schedule. "Miguel, what are you doing here so early?" The initial joy in her voice faded when she saw his expression. "What happened?" Miguel put the toolbox on the floor next to the door. "I got fired." Laura put the glass jug on the table and walked over to him. "What? Why?" They sat down in the small dining room of their house. It was a modest two-story house in a working-class neighborhood in Tonalá with light yellow painted cinder block walls and terracotta ceramic floors. They had bought the house 8 years ago, when they still had hopes of filling it with the noise of a large family. Those dreams had become complicated after Laura's second miscarriage, and they had eventually accepted that it would just be the two of them. Miguel told her everything while she listened quietly, her hand clasping his on the table. When he finished, Laura sighed deeply. "This isn't fair, Miguel. After all you gave to that workshop, the world isn't fair, my love, you know that." Miguel got up and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. "But I'm going to find something. There are other workshops. I can put up ads, offer my services at home. We have savings for 3 months, maybe 4 if we're careful," Laura said, calculating mentally. "My salary covers the basics, but the mortgage—" "I'm going to sell the truck," Miguel said suddenly. "What?" "No, Miguel, it's your work tool. It's paid for. I can get good money for it and buy something cheaper. That will buy us time." He was already making plans, his mechanic's mind searching for solutions as if it were a broken engine. The rest of Friday passed in a haze of phone calls and internet searches. Miguel contacted 3 well-known workshops in the area, but none of them were hiring. He posted ads on Facebook groups offering his services, even though he knew the competition was fierce, and many pirate mechanics worked for ridiculously low prices. Saturday dawned cloudy and threatening rain. Miguel decided to visit his friend Ernesto, who had a small repair shop in Santa Anita. Ernesto was older than him, a 55-year-old man with experience mainly in diesel engines. They had met years ago at a refresher course on electronic fuel injection systems. Ernesto's workshop was a converted industrial building with space for 4 cars, but he usually only serviced 2 at a time. When Miguel arrived, Ernesto was under a truck, cursing under his breath as he struggled with a rusted bolt. "Miguel, what a miracle!" Ernesto emerged from under the truck, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. His blue overalls were stained with black oil and dirt. Miguel explained the situation while they shared a cola at the small desk Ernesto had in a corner of the workshop. The walls were decorated with old calendars from auto parts brands and a wooden crucifix. "Damn, that's a mess," Ernesto said, shaking his head. "The Reyes family always had a good reputation, but since that junior guy took over, I've heard all kinds of stories. I wish I could offer you something here, bro, but I barely make enough to pay myself. This place has been dead." "I understand, buddy. I just came to see if you knew of anything out there." Ernesto thought for a moment. You know what? There's a guy who's been looking for me. He has a fleet of T's and is always in need of a mechanic. The problem is that he pays little and is hard to work for. He always wants everything done yesterday and haggles over even a screw. At this point, anything helps. I'll give you his contact information. But seriously, Miguel, that guy is complicated. His name is Rodolfo Mendez. Everyone calls him El Mencho. But don't get confused, he has nothing to do with the other famous Mencho. This one is just a transportation entrepreneur. Miguel wrote the number down on his cell phone. Thanks, buddy. Anything is better than nothing. Hey, if you need space to work on your own, you can use my workshop on Sundays. I'm not open that day. Bring your client, use the tools you need, and give me a small commission for the work. What do you say? It was a generous offer. I appreciate it, Ernesto. Seriously. On Sunday, Miguel woke up early even though he had nowhere to go. The 12-year routine was hard to break. He made himself some coffee and sat in the small backyard of his house, where he had a few potted plants that Laura took care of religiously. The sky was clear, promising another hot day. His cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Miguel Hernandez. It was the voice of an older man, raspy like a heavy smoker. Yes, he's talking. I'm Rodolfo Mendez. Ernesto Torres gave me your number. He says you're good with cars. Miguel sat up straight in his chair. Yes, sir. 12 years of experience in general mechanics, specializing in transmissions and electrical systems. Look, I don't care about your resume. I need someone who can fix my problems, not tell me stories. I have 15 taxis between Nissan Suru and Versa. There's always something broken. I'll pay you per repair, not per hour. If you do a good job, there's constant work. If you fail me, you're out on your ass. Are you interested or not? Miguel swallowed hard. The guy was as unpleasant as Ernesto had warned. I'm interested, Mr. Mendez. When do you want me to start? Tomorrow at 8, I have a Tsuru with brake problems and a Versa that stalls at traffic lights. I'll wait for you at my base. He gave her the address in a neighborhood near downtown and hung up without saying goodbye. Laura went out to the patio. Who was that? Work or something? Miguel told her about the call. He doesn't sound like a good boss. He's not, but it's something. Miguel got up and hugged her. It's only temporary until I find something better. On Monday morning, Miguel got up at 6, showered, put on his cleanest blue overalls, and checked that his basic toolbox was complete in the truck. Before going to Mendez, he had to stop by the Los Reyes workshop to pick up the rest of his tools. He arrived at the workshop at 7:30 a.m. The gate was open and he could see movement inside. He parked his truck outside and walked in. Javier and Mario were already working. A black BMW 3 Series was on lift 1, and Miguel immediately recognized the problem from the irregular sound of the engine. Intake manifold failure, common in those models. Miguel, I'm glad you came, Javier said as he approached. He seemed nervous. There's a big problem. I'm just here to get my stuff, Javier. I don't work here anymore, remember? Yes, I know, but look, a car came in on Saturday, a 2019 Mercedes-Benz C300. The customer is someone important, a congressman or something. The car has an electrical fault that no one can fix. It suddenly shuts down, loses power. The dashboard lights go crazy. We already changed the battery, checked the alternator, checked all the fuses. Nothing. Miguel frowned. And what does that have to do with me? Roberto Jr. tried to fix it all weekend. He hired an automotive electrician who charges a fortune. The guy charged $5,000 just to check it out and said he needed to take it to a Mercedes specialist in Mexico City. The customer is getting furious because he needs the car today. He says that if we don't deliver it, he's going to sue us and destroy us on social media. Where's Junior? In the office with his dad. They've been arguing since early this morning. Miguel sighed. It wasn't his problem. It wasn't his problem anymore. He walked over to his work area to pick up his tools, but as he did so, he couldn't help but glance at the Mercedes parked in the waiting area. It was a beautiful model, silver gray with sporty rims and a black leather interior visible through the windows. The office door opened and Don Roberto came out, followed by his son. They both looked stressed. Miguel? Don Roberto said when he saw him. Good morning, Don Roberto. Miguel nodded curtly. I'm just here to get my things. Roberto Jr. approached, and for the first time, Miguel saw him without that arrogant confidence. Look, Miguel, I know things didn't end well between us. They didn't end well. You fired me by email after 12 years. It was a phone call, not an email, Junior corrected weakly. Whatever, it's not my problem. That Mercedes over there, Junior pointed to the car. It belongs to Rogelio Vasquez, the local congressman. He's a new client, a very important one. If we lose him, we'll lose credibility. He's already invested money in advertising, mentioning that his car is kept here. Miguel continued to gather his tools without responding. I'd pay you well for the job, Junior continued. Pesos if you get it done today. Miguel stopped. Peso. It was more than he would earn in a week working for Mendez. But it wasn't just about the money. 2,000, Miguel said without turning to look at him. And I want to make it clear that this is freelance work. I don't work for you. You're hiring me for this specific job. Junior looked at his father, who nodded. All right, 2,000 pesos. Miguel put down his toolbox and walked over to the Mercedes. What exactly is wrong with it? Miguel got into the Mercedes-Benz C300 and turned the key in the ignition. The engine started smoothly with that refined purr characteristic of well-maintained German engines. The dashboard lit up with all its digital indicators working perfectly. He left the car running and stood watching, waiting for the fault to manifest itself. When was the last time it shut down? He asked without taking his eyes off the dashboard. Yesterday afternoon, Mario replied. We had it running in the parking lot for testing, and suddenly all the lights started flashing and it shut down. When we tried to start it again, it didn't respond. After about 20 minutes, it started up as if nothing had happened. Miguel nodded. That pattern was revealing. It wasn't a constant problem, but an intermittent one, which made it more difficult to diagnose, but also easier to identify once you understood what you were looking for. He got out of the car and opened the hood. The engine compartment was immaculately clean. Every component in its place. The hoses and cables organized with the German precision that characterized Mercedes-Benz. Did you bring the scanner? He asked. Javier handed him the diagnostic scanner, a digital tool that cost more than a mechanic's monthly salary. Miguel connected it to the car's Zoom OB port and waited while the device communicated with the vehicle's computer. Several error codes appeared on the screen, but none were critical. Minor sensor issues that had probably been caused by multiple battery disconnections during the weekend repair attempts. Show me everything you did, Miguel ordered. For the next hour, he meticulously reviewed every change they had made. The new battery was correctly installed. The alternator was operating within normal parameters. All the fuses were in order. The work had been technically correct, but they had been looking for the wrong problem. Miguel crouched down to check under the driver's dashboard with a small flashlight he always carried in his overalls pocket. He began to visually trace each wiring harness that ran from the main fuse box to different areas of the vehicle. Modern Mercedes had incredibly complex electrical systems with multiple control modules distributed throughout the car. Any history of accidents or flooding? He asked. No, according to the customer, Javier replied. He says he bought it new 4 years ago and has always maintained it well. Miguel continued his inspection, his hands following the wires with the familiarity of someone who had done this thousands of times before. Then he felt it, a slight play in a connector near the engine control module. He stretched further to reach it, his fingers touching the plastic of the connector. It was loose, but not obviously loose. He applied pressure, and the connector moved more than it should have. Give me a mirror and more light, he asked. Mario brought a portable lamp, the LED, and a long-handled inspection mirror. Miguel used them to see the back of the connector. There it was, a small crack in the plastic casing of the connector, almost invisible from any normal angle. The crack had allowed moisture to enter the connector, causing micro-corrosion on the pins. That intermittent corrosion was interrupting the signals between the control module and several critical sensors. When was the last air conditioning service? Miguel asked, his mind already connecting the dots. According to the log 2 months ago, Javier checked the customer's folder. It was done by the agency's workshop. There was the answer. During the air conditioning service, they had had to remove part of the lower dashboard to access the evaporator. In the process, they had probably applied pressure to the wiring harness incorrectly, fracturing the connector. The fracture was so small that the problem did not manifest itself immediately, but over time, changes in temperature and humidity had done their work. Miguel sat on the workshop floor, his back against the Mercedes tire. I need a new connector. It's part of the main harness of the control module. Part number. He took out his cell phone and searched a Mercedes parts database. Here it is. I also need specialized electrical contact cleaner and dielectric grease. How long will it take to get the part? Asked Roberto Jr., who had been watching silently from a safe distance. Miguel made a few calls. He had contacts at several parts stores in the area. He finally found the part at a parts store in Zapopan that specialized in European brands. They can have it here in 2 hours if we send someone to pick it up. Send Mario, ordered Junior. Wait, Miguel raised his hand. There's a faster way. I can splice and rebuild the connector with a compatible one. It will be just as good as the original. Maybe even better because I'm going to seal it completely against moisture. I can do it in an hour. Don Roberto, who had been listening from the office door, approached. Are you sure, Miguel? Absolutely. I've done this type of repair on Audis, BMWs, even Porsches. The key is to use the right materials and do the job with precision. The connector will be permanently sealed and protected. Do it, said Junior. The customer is coming at 2 p.m. It's 11 now. Miguel stood up and dusted off his pants. I need my complete toolbox. The one I left in my area has everything I need. While Miguel was preparing his tools, Don Roberto approached him. You know, I saw how you worked these last few minutes. That's the difference between a mechanic and a technician who just follows procedures. You understand cars. It's not magic, Don Roberto. It's experience and attention to detail. Miguel began to select the specific tools he would need: precision wire cutters, crimping pliers, a fine-tip soldering iron, heat shrink tubing of different diameters, automotive-grade electrical connectors, and special silicone sealant for electrical applications. The job required absolute concentration. Miguel first completely disconnected the Mercedes battery to avoid any possibility of a short circuit. Then, carefully, he cut the harness at a clean point before the damaged connector. Each wire was color-coded, but Miguel also took photos and made a diagram in a notebook, marking each pin in its corresponding wire. The temperature in the workshop rose as the morning progressed. Sweat ran down Miguel's forehead, but his hands remained steady. He removed the insulation from each wire with pinpoint accuracy, exposing enough to make a solid connection, but not so much as to create weak points. He cleaned each terminal with isopropyl alcohol, removing any traces of corrosion or oil. Javier approached with 2 glasses of fresh water. Here you go, maestro. Miguel took the glass without stopping work, drinking gratefully. Thanks, bro. You know, we're all pissed off about how they treated you, Javier said quietly. This shouldn't have happened. You've been here longer than Junior has been alive. That's the way the business is. Now Miguel connected the first pair of wires using a professional-grade splice connector, applying the exact pressure with the crimping tool. Numbers matter more than people. Are you coming back? After this, I'll say, no, bro, this is just freelance work. I already have something else. It's not much, but it's something. He worked methodically through each wire, checking each connection 3 times before moving on to the next. Once all the wires were spliced, he applied heat shrink tubing over each individual splice, using a soldering iron to shrink them into a tight seal. He then wrapped the entire group of wires with high-temperature Teflon tape, followed by more heat shrink tubing of a larger diameter. The end result looked clean and professional, better protected from the elements than the original connector. Before reconnecting the battery, Miguel used a multimeter to check continuity in each wire and ensure there were no accidental short circuits. Everything measured perfectly. He checked his diagram one last time, confirming that each wire was in the right place. It was 12:30 when he reconnected the battery. The moment of truth. Miguel sat behind the wheel of the Mercedes and turned the key. The engine started immediately, all systems coming to life. He connected the diagnostic scanner and cleared the previous error codes. Then he checked the real-time data. All parameters were within normal specifications. I need to test it on the road, Miguel said. 15 minutes of driving in different conditions. Take Javier with you, Don Roberto said. Let him see how you work. Miguel and Javier left the workshop in the Mercedes. The car handled smoothly, the German suspension absorbing the imperfections of the streets of Tlaquepaque with elegance. Miguel drove it along the main avenues, accelerating, braking, making sharp turns, testing the electrical system under different loads. He turned the air conditioning up to maximum, rolled up all the power windows, and activated the heated seats despite the heat outside. The car responded perfectly to every demand. "How did you know what to look for?" Javier asked as they returned to the workshop. "Because I listened to what they told me about the symptoms, an intermittent problem that manifests itself after the car is in use, affecting multiple systems at once, and improving after the car rests. That told me it wasn't a specific component failing, but an intermittent electrical connection. And when you said you had just come from the dealership for air service, I knew where to start looking." Back at the workshop, Miguel did a final visual inspection of his work. Satisfied, he closed the hood of the Mercedes and went to wash his hands in the workshop sink. Don Roberto was preparing the invoice for the customer. 2,000 pesos, as agreed, said Junior, handing over an envelope with the pitch. His tone was different, less arrogant now. Miguel took the envelope without counting it and put it in his pocket. "One more thing." Junior exchanged a glance with his father. "Look, Miguel, maybe I was too hasty last Friday. This workshop needs people like you, people who really know what they're doing." "I've already found another job," Miguel said without emotion in his voice. "Paying better than what you were doing here. That's not relevant. I can offer you your job back. Same salary plus a bonus for difficult cases like this one." Junior seemed sincere, or at least as sincere as he could be. Miguel dried his hands with a paper towel and turned to look at him directly. "You know what the problem is, Junior? It's not the money. It's that for 12 years this workshop was my second home. These people," he pointed to Javier and Mario, "are my family, and you threw me out like trash because the numbers in an Excel spreadsheet said you had to. You made me feel like 12 years of loyalty were worthless. And now what? Because an important client has a problem. Suddenly I'm valuable again." "It wasn't personal." "Exactly. It wasn't personal, and that's exactly the problem." Miguel walked over to his toolbox. "Stay in touch if you need anything else. But as a freelancer, only 3,000 pesos per job, no matter how simple or complex it is. And you come to me, I don't come to you." Before Junior could respond, a black BMW X5 pulled into the parking lot. A man in his 50s, wearing a gray suit and with an authoritative presence, got out of the vehicle. "Congressman Rogelio Vasquez." "Good afternoon," said Don Roberto, coming out to greet him. "Your Mercedes is ready. They've fixed the problem." The congressman sounded skeptical. "Completely. It was a damaged electrical connector that was causing the system to malfunction. It's been repaired and tested." The congressman entered the workshop and walked around his Mercedes, inspecting it as if he could detect invisible faults just by looking at it. "It better be. I've already spent enough money bringing it here." "Mr. Vasquez," Miguel stepped forward. "I did the repair. I can explain exactly what was wrong and what was done to fix it." For the next 10 minutes, Miguel explained the problem in terms that a non-mechanic could understand, using his cell phone to show photos of the damaged connector and the finished work. The congressman listened attentively, asking intelligent questions that showed he was a man accustomed to understanding complex systems. "So this won't happen again?" he finally asked. "The repair I made is permanent and is better sealed against the elements than the original connector. If this car has any electrical problems in the future, it won't be because of this connection." The congressman studied Miguel for a moment. "What's your name?" "Miguel Hernandez." "Sir, do you work here?" "No, I'm freelance. They hired me specifically for this job." The congressman took a business card out of his wallet. "Call me. I have 3 other cars and a fleet of campaign vehicles that always need maintenance. I like working with people who know what they're doing and can explain it clearly." Miguel took the card. Rogelio Vasquez, local congressman with multiple phone numbers and email addresses. After the congressman left, driving his Mercedes, which now worked perfectly, Miguel finished packing his tools. It was almost 2 p.m. He had to go to Rodolfo Mendez, although now the need didn't seem so urgent. Miguel, Don Roberto, stopped him before he left. "I know Junior screwed up. I know I screwed up by letting him make that decision. But this workshop isn't the same without you. Think about it, please. I've already thought about it, Don Roberto, and my answer is the same, but thank you for the years I was here. They were good most of the time. He drove to Rodolfo Mendez's taxi base with mixed feelings. He had solved the problem. He had earned respect and potentially an important client. But he had also confirmed something he already knew, that his value as a worker only mattered when there was an urgent problem. The rest of the time, he was just a number on a spreadsheet. The Rodolfo Mendez taxi stand was located in a rundown industrial area near the food market. It was a large lot surrounded by an unpainted cinder block fence with a rusty metal gate that remained open during the day. Inside, a dozen Nissan taxis were parked in disorganized rows, some with dented bumpers, others with broken windows covered with plastic and duct tape. Miguel parked his truck next to the gate and walked in. A fat man in his 60s, wearing an unbuttoned plaid shirt and a dirty Chivas cap, was sitting in a folding chair under a tarp that served as a roof. He was smoking a cigar while reviewing papers attached to a clipboard. "Mendez?" Miguel asked. The man looked him up and down. "You're the mechanic Ernesto recommended." "Yes, Mr. Miguel Hernandez. You're late. I told you 8 o'clock, and it's almost 3. Mendez crushed the cigarette under his shoe and stood up with effort. He was shorter than Miguel, but his presence was intimidating in an unpleasant way. "I had an emergency job that came up this morning, but I'm here now." Mendez looked at him suspiciously. "The Suru with brake problems is over there." He pointed to a white taxi with the hood open and the engine running. "The Versa is in the workshop." He pointed to an unfinished brick building at the back of the lot with a tin roof that made it hellishly hot inside. Miguel checked the Suru first. The front brakes were completely worn out, the pads reduced almost to metal. The discs had deep grooves and showed uneven wear. The brake fluid in the reservoir was black, a sign that it hadn't been changed in years. This wasn't a repair job, it was criminal negligence. The car shouldn't be on the road. "This taxi needs new brakes." "Go ahead," Miguel said. "Pits, discs, fluid change. And from the look of the wheels, the rear ones are probably bad too. Just do the minimum to get it through," Mendez replied. "Change the front pads and put in fluid. The discs still work." "Mr. Mendez, with all due respect, these discs are out of specification. If I only change the pads, the brakes won't work properly." "It's dangerous. Look, mechanic, I've been in this business for 20 years. I know what my cars need. Either you do what I say or you leave. There are a lot of mechanics out there who need work." Miguel took a deep breath. He needed the money, but this went against his entire sense of professionalism. "How much are you paying for the job?" 300 pesos for the taxi. You bring your own parts. I just provide the space." It was ridiculous. The cheap brake pads cost 200 pesos a set, and even if he bought the lowest quality ones, there was no profit margin. More importantly, putting his name on a half-assed job on a taxi that transported people was putting lives at risk. "I can't do it, Mr. Mendez." "What? I can't do a half-assed job on a brake system? It's irresponsible and dangerous. And the price you're offering doesn't even cover the basic parts." Mendez approached Miguel, his face red. "Who the hell do you think you are to come here and tell me how to run my business? I'm a professional mechanic who's not going to put his name on a job that's been done poorly." Miguel stood his ground without backing down. "Get out of here and tell Ernesto to stop sending me lousy mechanics who think they're so great." Miguel returned to his truck without saying another word. As he left the lot, he saw the taxi drivers watching him. Some looked relieved, others disappointed. They all looked tired. Men working with poor equipment for an abusive boss with no choice but to accept the conditions. He drove aimlessly for a while, processing what had just happened. He had turned down the only stable job he had ever had on principle. Laura was going to kill him, but every time he thought about putting new brake pads on damaged discs, about sending that taxi out on the streets, knowing that the brakes could fail at any moment, he knew he had made the right decision. His cell phone rang. It was Laura. "How was your first day?" Miguel told her everything. The job on the Mercedes, the confrontation with Mendez, his decision not to do the job poorly. Laura was silent for a moment. "You did the right thing." "Seriously, I thought you were going to be angry. I've been married to you for 18 years, Miguel. I know you. If you had done that job poorly, your conscience would have eaten you alive. You wouldn't have been able to sleep thinking about that taxi with faulty brakes. Money isn't worth your peace of mind. I love you, you know. I know. Now come home. I made mole. Miguel was arriving at his neighborhood when his cell phone rang again. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hello, Miguel Hernandez speaking. Arturo Castillo here. I own Auto Service Castillo in Zapopan. Congressman Vasquez called me a while ago and recommended you. He told me about the work you did on his Mercedes. Miguel froze in the street. Yes, Mr. Castillo. How can I help you? I need a specialist mechanic. We have a lot of work, especially with European cars, good customers, well-paid jobs. Would you be interested in an interview? Of course, sir. Can you come tomorrow at 10? Miguel wrote down the address. Auto Service Castillo was a well-known repair shop in Zapopan, specializing in luxury brands. It had a good reputation in the mechanic community. That night, while eating the mole Laura had prepared for dinner, Miguel told her about Castillo's call. It sounds promising, Laura said. But don't get too excited. We've had hopes before, I know, but this feels different. The guy sought me out on the direct recommendation of a satisfied customer. It's not like sending out blind resumes. The next day, Miguel got up early and put on his most presentable clothes, dark jeans without rips and a navy blue polo shirt that Laura had ironed the night before. He arrived at Auto Service Castillo 15 minutes before the agreed time. The workshop was impressive. It occupied a large, modern industrial building with polished concrete floors, painted light gray, bright LED lighting, and 6 state-of-the-art hydraulic lifts. The walls were painted white and decorated with logos from different automotive brands. An air-conditioned, glass-enclosed waiting room offered comfortable seating, free coffee, and a large-screen TV. Arturo Castellan was a man of about 45, tall and slim, with black-rimmed glasses and short, well-groomed hair. He wore dress pants and a polo shirt with the workshop logo embroidered on it, nothing like the traditional image of a grease-covered workshop owner. Miguel, you're punctual. I like that. Castillo gave him a firm handshake. Let me show you around. During the tour, Miguel was impressed. They had high-tech diagnostic equipment, specialized tools for different brands, a separate paint area, and even a small upholstery section. 5 mechanics were working on different cars: an Audi Q5, a BMW X3, a Range Rover, a Porsche Cayenne, and a Volkswagen Tiguan. Our specialty is German brands, Castillo explained, but we service anything that comes through that door, as long as we have the ability to do it right. We have agreements with 3 agencies and several corporate clients. There's no shortage of work. They sat down in a small, air-conditioned office. Unlike Don Roberto's chaotic office, this one was meticulously organized. A glass desk with a modern computer, labeled metal filing cabinets, and certifications from various automotive training programs on the wall. Tell me about your experience, Castillo said. Although Miguel suspected that the deputy had already given him a summary, Miguel talked about his 12 years at Reyes, his training in different automotive systems, his experience with transmissions, electrical systems, engines. He mentioned courses he had taken, certifications he had obtained. He didn't mention why he had left Reyes. If Castillo wanted to know, he would have to ask directly, why did you leave your previous job? There was the question. Miguel decided to be honest. I was fired. The owner's son took control of the business and decided he needed to cut costs. I was the highest paid, so I was the first to go. And now you work for them as a freelancer? I made it clear that I would not return as an employee except for that Mercedes job. Castillo nodded thoughtfully. The congressman told me you're the best mechanic he's ever met. Coming from him, who is quite demanding, that means a lot. He also told me that you turned down an offer to return to your previous job after solving his problem. That's right. Why? Pride doesn't pay the bills. It wasn't pride, it was self-respect. If I had stayed after how they treated me, what would have stopped them from doing it again when it was no longer convenient? I respect that. Castillo leaned back in his chair. Here's my offer. 12,000 pesos a month as a base salary plus a 15% commission on jobs you do directly. Hours are Monday through Friday from 8 to 6, Saturdays at noon, Sundays off. Legal benefits from day one. After 3 months, if all goes well, we'll review the base salary. We have a budget for ongoing training, so if there are courses that interest you, we can look into financing them. What do you say? It was a better offer than Miguel had expected. The base salary was similar to what he earned at Los Reyes, but the commissions could make a big difference. And the culture of the workshop seemed completely different, more professional. When can I start? How about Monday? Will that give you time to take care of your affairs? Miguel extended his hand. It's a deal. As he drove home, Miguel allowed himself to feel relief for the first time since the previous Friday. It had been an emotional roller coaster of a week, but somehow he had ended up in a better place than he had started. His cell phone rang again. This time it was Don Roberto. Miguel, don't hang up. Just hear me out for a minute. I'm listening. Junior and I have been talking. We want to offer you a partnership in the workshop, 25% of the shares. You would be involved in important decisions, not just as an employee. It was a tempting offer. Being a partner in an established workshop like Los Reyes meant long-term security, but Miguel had already made his decision. Don Roberto, I appreciate the offer, really, but I've already accepted another job. I start on Monday. Where? Auto Service Castillo. There was silence on the other end. Don Roberto knew that workshop. He knew its reputation. It's a good place, Miguel. Castillo is a good guy. You'll do well there. Thank you, Don Roberto, and thank you for everything I learned at Reyes. Really, take care, Miguel, and if you ever need anything, call me, not as a customer, but as a friend, as whatever we are now. Miguel arrived home and found Laura in the backyard. When he told her about the new job, she put down the hose and gave him a big hug. I knew something good was going to come out of this, she said. How did you know? Because you're good at what you do, and people who are good at what they do always find their place. That night, as they prepared dinner together, Miguel reflected on everything that had happened a week ago. He thought his professional life had collapsed. Now he had a better job, with better pay, in a more professional environment, and it had all started with being fired. Sometimes, he thought as he chopped onions for the stew, the worst things that happen to us end up taking us to better places. We just need to have the courage not to settle for less than we deserve. On Monday morning, Miguel arrived at Castillo Auto Service at 7:45. The front door of the shop was already open, and he could hear the sound of activity inside. He had slept poorly the night before, nervous like a student on his first day of school, mentally reviewing everything he knew about the systems of the brands that the shop serviced. Arturo Castillo was already in his office, working on the computer. He looked up when Miguel knocked on the door. Good morning, Miguel. Punctual again. He got up and handed him a gray polo shirt with the workshop logo embroidered in blue and red. We have 2 uniforms per person. This is your first one. I'll give you the others on Saturday. Miguel changed in the small dressing room next to the bathrooms. The shirt fit well and was made of good quality, breathable material. He felt professional in a way he had never experienced with the old, oil-stained overalls. Come on, let me introduce you to the team, said Castillo. The other 5 mechanics were gathered around the coffee area drinking their first cup of the morning. They were a mix of ages and experience. Team, this is Miguel Hernandez. He's joining us starting today. Castillo made the introductions. This is Carlos, our electrical systems specialist. Ricardo mainly handles transmissions. Fernando is our expert in air conditioning and refrigeration systems. Jose Luis handles most of the suspension and steering work. And Pablo is our junior mechanic. He's still learning. Everyone greeted him warmly. Although Miguel detected a certain reserve, it was understandable. A new mechanic could mean less work and fewer commissions for the others. He would have to earn his place. Miguel has extensive experience in general mechanics with a specialization in engines and complex problem diagnosis, Castillo continued. Congressman Vasquez personally recommended him, and if you know the congressman, you know he doesn't recommend anyone lightly. That changed the atmosphere. Vasquez's name clearly meant something here. Carlos, a man in his mid-30s with safety glasses hanging around his neck, nodded approvingly. Das, anything you need, just ask, Carlos said. We all help each other here. There are no egos like in other workshops. Miguel's first job was relatively simple. A major service on a 2018 Volkswagen Jetta, oil and filter change, brake check, tire rotation, general inspection. It was the kind of routine work he could do with his eyes closed. But Miguel took his time making sure he did everything correctly, familiarizing himself with the workshop's workflow. The difference from the Kings was striking. Here, there was a digital system for everything. Every job was documented on a tablet with before and after photos, electronic checklists, and QR codes that customers could scan to see exactly what had been done to their car. It was efficient and transparent. Mid-morning, a 2020 Mercedes-Benz E-Class arrived with an irregular engine noise. The owner, a neatly dressed businessman in his 50s, seemed frustrated. "I've taken it to the dealership 3 times," he explained to Castallo. "They say they can't find anything wrong, but the noise is still there. It sounds like a ticking when it's idling." Castillo looked over to where Miguel was finishing up with the Jetta. "Miguel, can you take a look at it?" Miguel walked over to the Mercedes and asked the owner to start it up. He listened carefully, walking around the car with his ear pressed against it. The noise was subtle, but it was definitely there. A rhythmic ticking that shouldn't exist in a well-maintained Mercedes engine. "What kind of oil do you use?" Miguel asked. "The one the dealership gives me. I take it there for all my services." Miguel opened the hood and checked the oil level and condition. It was within the correct range, but when he rubbed it between his fingers, the texture wasn't right. Too thin for the Guadalajara climate. "I think I know what the problem is," Miguel said. "May I check the service log?" The owner took a folder out of the glove compartment with all the maintenance records. Miguel reviewed them carefully. The car had had its last service 2 months ago, and the type of oil used was correct according to the manual. But the viscosity, here it is, Miguel pointed out. They are using 5W30 synthetic oil, which is technically within specification. But for the climate in Guadalajara and the type of urban use the car gets, they should be using Quelo 40. The lower viscosity is allowing for microplay in the hydraulic valve lifters. It's not enough to cause immediate damage, but it creates that noise. The dealership made a mistake. The owner sounded incredulous. They didn't make a mistake. Technically, they used an oil that the manual lists as acceptable, but it's not optimal for your specific conditions of use. "Can you fix it?" "I can change the oil using 5W40. "Right, I'm also going to flush the system before putting in the new oil. The noise should disappear completely." The owner looked at Castillo. "How long?" "2 hours, Miguel replied. 1 hour for the flush and the change. Another hour to make sure everything is correct and the noise is gone." "Go ahead." While Miguel worked on the Mercedes, Carlos approached him. Impressive diagnosis. The dealership probably checked sensors, spark plugs, even valve timing, and it was just the wrong oil. "Sometimes the solutions are simpler than we think," Miguel said. "The key is to listen to what the car is telling you." The lubrication system flush took exactly 1 hour. Miguel used a specialized cleaner that circulated through the engine for 15 minutes before draining it completely. He then installed a new oil filter and filled the engine with high-quality 5W40 synthetic oil. He started the engine and let it idle while listening carefully. The ticking was gone. After checking for leaks and making sure all the levels were correct, he went out to find the owner, who had been waiting in the air-conditioned waiting room, drinking coffee and checking his laptop. "Come listen," Miguel said. The businessman stood next to the open hood of the Mercedes. The engine purred softly without any strange noises. "I can't believe it," he said, shaking his head. 3 visits to the dealership and you solved it in 2 hours. "The dealership has its protocols," Miguel explained diplomatically. "Sometimes those protocols don't cover specific problems. Independent repair shops have more flexibility to think outside the box." The businessman gave Miguel his card. "Carlos Montoya, Director of Operations for Grupo Montoya. We have a fleet of 23 executive vehicles, mostly Audis and Mercedes. This shop can handle that volume." Miguel looked at Castillo, who had been watching from a distance. Castillo approached. "We definitely can, Mr. Montoya. We have the capacity and experience with corporate fleets. I'm going to send you our cars," Montoya decided. "I'm fed up with agencies that charge a fortune and don't solve basic problems." After Montoya left, Castillo put his hand on Miguel's shoulder. "Excellent work. That's exactly the kind of customer we want." The rest of the week flew by. Miguel integrated himself into the team, earning the respect of his colleagues with his knowledge and willingness to help when someone faced a difficult problem. The atmosphere was completely different from the Kings. Here there was professionalism, established systems, and above all, mutual respect. On Friday afternoon, just as Miguel was about to leave, his cell phone rang. It was Roberto Jr. Miguel, can we talk? I'm listening. I need your help. Another car with problems that no one can solve. A Land Rover. The owner is the president of the Chamber of Commerce. If we don't fix it, we're going to lose credibility with the entire business community in the area. Miguel sighed. Part of him wanted to say no on principle, but another part, the part that really loved technical challenges, was intrigued. 3,000 pesos. And this time it's cash before we start. Okay, you can come tomorrow morning. Let me check with my boss. Miguel walked into Castillo's office, who was still working on the computer. Excuse me, Arturo, I have a question, he explained the situation. Castillo listened without interrupting. Do you want to do it? He finally asked. Actually, yes. I like difficult problems, and an extra 3,000 is always welcome. Do it, but be careful. The Reyes family will keep coming to you when they have problems because they've realized what they've lost. Don't let them use you. I won't. Thank you. On Saturday morning, Miguel arrived at the Reyes house with his toolbox. The Land Rover Range Rover Sport was on the main lift with the hood and several doors open. Roberto Jr. greeted him with the cash in hand. 3,000 as agreed. He handed him the money without the envelope this time. 3,000 peso bills. Miguel counted it and put it in his wallet. What's the problem? Electrical system. The doors lock and unlock on their own. The windows go up and down without anyone touching them. Sometimes the air conditioning turns on by itself, and occasionally all the systems shut down completely and the car dies. It lasts a few minutes and then everything works again. It was a complex problem, the kind that could take hours or even days to diagnose. But Miguel already had a hypothesis based on the symptoms. He got into the Range Rover and checked the body control module located under the driver's seat. He disconnected the module and examined it carefully. There it was, evidence of water infiltration. Someone had spilled liquid in the seat area, probably to drink, and the liquid had slowly dripped down to the control module. The resulting corrosion was causing intermittent short circuits that affected all connected systems. The body control arm is damaged by water, Miguel explained. It needs to be replaced. It's an expensive part, probably between 15,000 and 20,000, depending on where you get it. Roberto Jr. paled. There's no way to repair it. I can try to clean it up and rebuild the damaged connections like I did with the Mercedes. But in this case, the damage is more extensive. I can make it functional temporarily, but the customer will need to replace the module eventually. It's a question of how long he wants to live with a temporary fix versus investing in a permanent solution. Do the temporary fix. The customer is furious about the expenses. If we tell him he needs to spend another 20,000, he'll sue us. Miguel worked on the control module for 4 hours. He meticulously cleaned each connection with isopropyl alcohol and contact cleaner. He repaired damaged printed circuit tracks using fine copper wire and precision soldering. He sealed everything with moisture-resistant epoxy resin. When he was finished, he reinstalled the module and tested all the systems. Everything was working properly. It's ready, he told Junior, but make sure the customer understands that this is a temporary repair. The module will need to be replaced within 6 months to a year. I understand. Thanks, Miguel. As Miguel packed up his tools, Javier approached him. How's the new job going? Good, very good. In fact, the atmosphere is completely different. I'm happy for you, bro. You deserve it. Javier lowered his voice. Things are tense here. Don Roberto and Junior are still fighting. There are rumors that Don Roberto wants to sell his share and retire. Seriously? Yes. And between you and me, I don't think Junior will be able to keep this place going on his own. We've already lost 2 big clients because we couldn't solve their problems in time. The ones we did solve were because you came to help. Miguel said nothing. It wasn't his problem. He drove home feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction at having solved another complex technical problem. Sadness at seeing a business that had been solid for decades crumble due to poor management decisions. Laura was in the living room looking at something on her tablet. How did it go? Fine. 3,000 pesos for 4 hours of work. Not bad. Laura put the tablet aside. Hey, I have news. Good or bad? Good. They offered me the position of supervisor at the pharmacy. 6,000 pesos more a month. Miguel hugged her. That's incredible. When do you start? Next month. With your new salary and my raise, we'll be better off financially than ever. That night over dinner, Miguel reflected on the month that had passed. He had been fired, he had faced rejection, he had made difficult decisions based on principles rather than convenience, and somehow everything had turned out better than he could have hoped. You know what's ironic? Miguel said. The bosses fired me because they thought they were saving money. Now they have to pay me 3,000 pesos every time they need help. That's triple what they paid me per day when I work in full time. That's called karma, Laura laughed, or basic economics. The real value of a worker isn't how much you pay them, but how much it costs you to replace them. The following Monday, Miguel arrived at Auto Service Castillo at 7:45 a.m. As usual, there were 3 new cars waiting, including 2 from the Grupo Montoya fleet. The workflow was steady, the customers were satisfied, and the work environment was respectful and professional. Mid-morning, Castillo called him into his office. Miguel, I have a proposal for you. I know you've only been here 2 weeks, but you've already proven your worth. I want to offer you a technical supervisor role. You would continue to do mechanical work, but you would also help the other mechanics with difficult diagnoses and ensure quality control. Pesos more per month on your base, plus commissions. What do you say? It was exactly the kind of recognition he had never received at Reyes despite 12 years of service. I accept. Thank you for your trust. You've earned it. Oh, and one more thing. Congressman Vasquez wants you to personally maintain his 3 cars. He says he doesn't trust anyone else. That means guaranteed commissions every month. Miguel left the office feeling something he hadn't felt in years, genuine appreciation for his work. His cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Don Roberto. Miguel, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet for lunch? Miguel replied, sure, Don Roberto. Tell me when and where. They met on Wednesday at a small traditional restaurant in Tlaquepaque. Don Roberto was already there when Miguel arrived, sitting at a table in the corner, looking older and more tired than Miguel remembered. Thank you for coming, Don Roberto said after they ordered. What's going on, Don Roberto? I want to sell you my share of the workshop. Miguel almost choked on his water. What? 60% of the shares. Junior has 40%. I have 60. I want to retire, Miguel. I'm tired, and I can't stand to see my son destroy what my father and I built. Don Roberto, I don't have that kind of money, I know. But we can work out a 5-year payment plan with minimal interest. Or if you prefer, I can look for another buyer. But I'd rather it be you. You know the business, you know the customers, you know the team. It was a tempting offer to be the majority owner of an established workshop. But Miguel also remembered the attention, the problems with Junior, the reasons he had left. I need to think about it, Miguel finally said. And I need to talk to Laura. I understand. Take your time, but not too long. I have other interested parties. That night, Miguel told Laura about the offer. They sat in the backyard under the stars as they processed the decision. It's a lot of money, Laura said, and a lot of responsibility. I know, and it would also mean dealing with Junior, who clearly doesn't want me there. But it's also an opportunity to be my own boss, to build something of my own. You already have something of your own at Castillo. They treat you well and give you opportunities to grow. That's true. What do you really want, Miguel? It was the right question. Miguel closed his eyes and thought deeply. What did he want? He already had security at Castillo. Money between his new salary, commissions, and freelance work. He was earning more than ever. He was receiving recognition at Castillo in a way he had never experienced at Reyes. I want peace, he finally said. I want to go to work without drama, without tension, without office politics. I want to do my job well and come home without stress. Laura took his hand. Then you know your answer. Miguel replied to Don Roberto 2 days later. Don Roberto, I greatly appreciate the offer. It's an honor that you thought of me, but I'm going to decline. I've found a good place where I am, and I think it's best for both of us if I find another buyer for your share of the shop. I wish you the best in your retirement. Don Roberto replied with a short message. I understand, Miguel. I hope you do very well. You were the best mechanic I ever had, Oasel, and I will always regret how things turned out. 3 months later, Miguel had established a solid routine at Auto Service Castillo. He was the technical supervisor, respected by his colleagues, appreciated by customers, and valued by Castillo. He had helped bring in several new corporate clients, and the shop was growing. One Saturday afternoon, as he was cleaning his tools at the end of the day, his cell phone rang. It was Ernesto. "Miguel, have you heard?" "Heard what?" "Los Reyes closed. Don Roberto sold his share to a chain of express repair shops. Junior left before he was fired. Javier, Mario, and the others are looking for work." Miguel felt a pang of sadness. 12 years of his life, and the place no longer existed. "Do you know anything about Don Roberto?" "He went to Ijic, to the lake. He says he's going fishing and forgetting about cars. I'm happy for him, and the boys." Javier found something at a workshop in Tonalá. Mario is still looking. I don't know about the others. Miguel hung up and remained thoughtful. Then he called Castillo. "Arturo, we're still looking for a junior mechanic." "Yes, why?" "I know someone, Mario Rodriguez. Young, hardworking, eager to learn. I can give him your contact information." "Sure, have him call me on Monday." Miguel sent Mario a message with Castillo's contact information. Half an hour later, he received a reply. "Thanks, Miguel. Seriously, thank you very much." That night, while having dinner with Laura, she noticed that he was quieter than usual. "What are you thinking about? How life changes?" "3 months ago, I thought my world had ended. Today, I have a better job. I'm making more money, and the place I thought was my home doesn't even exist anymore." "Do you regret anything?" Miguel thought about it carefully. "No, if I hadn't been fired, I would never have looked for something better. I would have stayed there, comfortable but unappreciated, until I was eventually fired anyway when the business went bankrupt." Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are the best things that could have happened to us. Exactly. Months after being fired, Miguel was standing in the auto service Castello workshop, supervising the work of 4 mechanics, including Mario, who had proven to be as good an apprentice as Miguel had hoped. The shop had grown so much that Castillo had purchased the adjacent industrial warehouse to expand operations. Miguel had learned something fundamental in those months. His value did not depend on being recognized by a specific place. His value lay in his skills, his work ethic, and his willingness to stick to his principles even when it was difficult. Places that didn't value him would eventually realize their mistake, but by then he would already be somewhere better. And now, every time a car with an impossible problem came through that door, Miguel smiled because that was his moment to shine, to show why he was the best at what he did. Not out of pride, but out of a genuine love for the craft of understanding how things worked and making them work well again. It was a good place to be, and he had gotten there precisely because he had refused to settle for less than he deserved. M.